So if you like movies that show how cops and the criminals they chase can oftentimes be two sides of the same coin and a lot more similar than most people would think, you'll probably like this movie because this really drives home that angle. You would think sometimes that the people who break the laws and the people who uphold the laws would be polar opposites, and the people who uphold the laws would be the biggest sticklers about rule breaking and the most by the book and the most moral, but oftentimes that's not the case. And there's a lot of reasons for this. One reason is oftentimes being a police officer, you can be around violence and evil so much that it can just demoralize you, and eventually you can become jaded and you can just become evil because you just think the world is so evil, and you can just become evil yourself because you just can't handle trying to maintain goodness in the face of so much horribleness. Another reason is oftentimes when you're a cop, there's so much temptation. You see these bad guys and you just want to get them so much and you just want to do good and bring them to justice. You want to bend the rules a bit and you want to use tactics and that are sometimes evil, and you want to kind of fight fire with fire. There's such a temptation to do good. Sometimes you can actually do evil trying to get there. And then a third explanation is that just being a cop, that job attracts kind of not evil people, but people with more of an ability to be around violence, experience violence, more of a desire to inflict violence. Some people might become a cop because they really want to do good and change the world. Some people might become a cop because they want to be around violent people and they want to be around that violence and something about it excites them. But regardless of why it is, this idea of a rogue unit of police officers fighting criminals with the same tactics that the criminals use, it's a winning formula. And also, the movie really plays up this whole good criminal Robin Hood vibe where even the money that they're stealing, it's money that's going to be shredded and destroyed anyway. So even when criminals rob the bank, there's some sense that they're robbing from the taxpayer, at least robbing from the government. In this sense, they're actually taking money that's going to be destroyed anyway. So the movie really does play up this angle of, the cops and the criminals, who's good, who's bad, I don't know. And this movie was a better heist movie than I thought it would be. There were some great heist elements, scouting out the place for information, getting some kind of entry-level job. In this case, it was food delivery to get entry, planning something before the heist, and then you use it later in the heist. There were so many cool elements. And then during the heist, zip ties for hostage control, barking order at hostages. I got an Inside Man vibe a lot. That was one of my favorite heist movies. As far as action, there wasn't a whole lot. No fighting, not a lot of fisticuffs, mostly just one big firefight. And I'm not a big fan of firefights. I find there's kind of a waste of time. I feel like there's just a lot of loud noises and nothing's really happening. But I can say that this was one of the better firefights I've seen. It was an interesting location they chose for it. There's some cool guns. Anytime you have a gun that has to be on a tripod to aim, that's always cool. And it did make for, after the end of this brutal firefight and this long, exhausted chase scene, there's a pretty satisfying conclusion. So the action, while there wasn't a lot of it, the stuff they had was good. And if you want to know if you're going to like this movie, there's two scenes. One, 50 Cent's character, his daughter's going off to prom, and he intimidates her date with him and his gang buddies. And there's another scene where Gerard Butler's character, he is getting divorced from his wife, and he goes over to sign the divorce papers, crashes this party she's having with all her fancy friends, kind of gets in their face and intimidates them. And you may roll your eyes at these scenes and think it's from another century, then you're probably not going to like this movie. But if those kind of scenes you think are kind of interesting and kind of maybe wish fulfillment even, you might like this movie a lot. And the casting in this was fantastic. Gerard Butler, great performance. He took kind of the sarcastic wisecracking from The Ugly Truth and the ruthless win-at-all-cost commander from 300 and combined them into this very charismatic, compelling character. Kind of seems teetering on the edge of sanity at times, but also the movie did a good job humanizing him. He has some really nice scenes with his daughter. Just a great performance from him. And then O'Shea Jackson Jr., he's brilliant in this. He's one of my favorite actors, channeling kind of Ansel Elgort and Baby Driver. There's something about Getaway Drivers where someone can watch a movie and think, well, the people that actually robbing the bank, they're violent scumbags, but the Getaway Driver, that's totally different. And then Pablo Schreiber, I know him from Law & Order SVU. He had this small arc as a villain, and he was amazing. Probably the best performance I've seen on SVU from any of the villains they've had. And he was great in this, so menacing without having to do or say that much, and yet still likable, and you kind of root for him, kind of root against him. And with these three characters and all the great standoffs between them, I can't help but feeling a little disappointed that this movie wasn't better, because with the cast of characters, I feel like there was so much potential for this to be one of the all-time great heist movies even, and I feel like it just wasn't. I won't say it's a bad movie, but it was a bit of a letdown. I just wish they got more out of this great cast they assembled. Okay, now I'm gonna explain some of the ending because I thought it was quite cool, so there will be spoilers going forward. So this is the first time I've ever seen a movie where they have to rob a bank to get all this money so they can then rob another bank. So you might say it's unrealistic that if they rob this first bank, well, then the city would be on high alert and all these banks would have high security measures put in place in this time. But as they said, it's in LA and there's bank robberies almost every day. So it wouldn't be that out of the ordinary. They can't shut down all these banks every time there's a robbery somewhere. And also, this bank they were robbing, it says Bank of Banks, the Federal Reserve. It was thought to be a fortress, so they probably wouldn't care that there's some minor bank robbery. They're not going to change their operations that much. I always like when they smuggle the money out through the garbage, but I especially liked how they commandeer the garbage truck, and it's so easy because there's no security on a garbage truck, that people are never really too worried about securing garbage. So compared to them robbing the armored truck earlier, it's so much easier to rob a garbage truck. Like, who cares about garbage?